folks. Dev. Episode 6 of the updates. If you're just joining us, my name is Devin Townsend, and I'm using my updates and podcast and sort of social media presence on large to describe the process of making a new project from beginning to end. I'm just in the formative stages of working on this project called The Moth. And up to this point, I've just been sort of setting the stage for it in a lot of ways. And what I've been trying to do with it is, whenever I have a thought, I just write it on my phone, and then when we have a chance to talk, I sort of ruminate through those things that I've written down in hopes that it gives me some clues as to what is going on internally so that I can represent it externally. This process has been going on since the very formative stages of my career, and it's only now that we're kind of bringing it to light. And the aim of this is ultimately to show other people, creative people such as yourselves, that these problems are kind of ubiquitous, you know? It's like everybody at every walk of life, and no matter where you are career-wise, I think that the same artistic roadblocks exist en masse. They're just, everybody goes through them. And to varying degrees, I guess. I mean, I'm sure there's people that don't go through that. I'm sure there's people that just pick up a guitar and let it rip, and that would be amazing, I guess. But at the same time, I do know a lot of people that struggle with self-doubt, and as do I, of course. And so as I've been making notes for myself here, I guess the best way to start this update is to say that I think I've only got a couple more of these updates. And then from there, one of the things that I've been working on in the sidelines is this project, I guess. But I've built a spaceship. You'll see. I've talked about it before. It's called the Ruby Quaker. And I'm about a week away from the construction of that being done. And then I've just got some preliminary things to set up, and I got to think up a theme song and figure out a way to make that format something that I'm engaged enough with to continue. And then I think the updates for the remainder of the Moth project will occur in that way. And it's maybe a little more formal than these, but at the same time, it's fucking cool, man. Yeah, it's funny as a 51-year-old man to talk to, you know, your parents or your friends and say, oh, I'm building a spaceship. And the companies that I'm working with, I'm like, oh, I'm building a spaceship. Do you want to contribute anything to the spaceship? I guess on one hand, I assume that everybody would just be like, oh, you're an idiot. And maybe they do think that, but on the exterior, overwhelmingly, people have been like, that's really cool, man. So the goal is to blast off in a couple of weeks, and then all the updates will happen from my spaceship on the way to Mothland, I guess. I guess it's about a year away. I don't know the speed we're going to be going, but it's about a year away. All right, so what's the thoughts been this week? Well, as I mentioned last week, I think I was getting so wrapped up in what the music for The Moth should be over the past couple of months. I think I've been second guessing myself to the point where everything that I wrote, as I mentioned last week, just seemed uninspired. And I kept writing and I kept writing and I kept beating my head against the wall. And I think there's something that happens with the artistic temperament that I'm sure some of you would relate to, where your desire to be in that state of flow where you're in the heat of it, the moments usually during the inception of a project where you'll get a piece of music or a piece of art or a piece of literature that really scratches the itch, and then you're in it. You don't have to be so microscopic about the process that you're worried about editing drums or editing text. You're just you found it, and you're in it. And that process, for me, the real heavy aspect of that usually only lasts for maybe a week or two for an entire project. And the project may take 2 years, but there's only usually like 1 or 2 weeks of, yes, that's it. This is what it is. This is what I want it to be. That's what the aesthetic is. Oh yeah, it's that aspect of that song. That's the thing that's been bugging me that I haven't been able to figure out. And how do I find what the nature of that one little aspect of the music is, so I can extrapolate that and then isolate what it is about that appeals to me, and then start down the avenue of pursuing that as the overall vibe of the work. But that hasn't happened yet. And what ends up happening for me is I get so attached to that feeling. I mean, I crave it so much. I crave that excitement that comes with being able to finally say, oh right, the moth is this. Oh right, infinity is this. Oh right, empath is this. Whatever it is. And then you get that one song, and you're able to say, oh, that's the template for all of the rest of it. That's the guitar sound. That's the the musicians and the aesthetic and all these things. But it doesn't happen. But because I crave that so much, if I'm not in the right headspace that will achieve that, I just keep beating my head against the wall. And I keep thinking, well, maybe if I just get back in the studio again, and maybe if I just write something else, and maybe if I just grind through it. But what ends up happening, and I think now I'm starting to recognize this more than I did in the past, I would maybe I would romanticize that part of the process that now I recognize as having little or no value. I would romanticize the struggle that went with trying to find what the record was about. When in all honesty, the thing that almost always allows those things to kind of settle and your subconscious to catch up to where your excitement is to stop for a while. So I stopped last week. Like I said, I haven't been writing anything. I've just been installing Atmos, which I'll talk about in a second. It's amazing. And just kind of trying to get everything, get all my cables right, get all my ducks in order, build a freaking spaceship. And as a result of that, I think I had mentioned last time that there was a couple of ideas there was a hint of something in there. It wasn't anything yet, but there was a hint of it. I said there was 2 things. And by stopping, what I've found that when I'm going for a walk or having a shower or working on other things, there's these melodies that start to loop around in my head, and I'm like, oh, it's that chorus from that one song that I didn't see as having any value. But without the strict regiment of getting into the studio every morning, which I've kind of been a proponent of for many years, of just grinding through it, and what lies behind the bullshit is the good stuff. Without doing that, while I'm focusing on other things, more practical things, I guess, it's like the good ones start to ferment. And there's this one song that I keep thinking, it's not there yet, but as a mission statement, the lyrics that keep coming up in the chorus seem really appropriate. Something about a stained heart is a strong start. it's like the cadence of a lyric or whatever. It just starts to go around, and inevitably the songs that end up lasting for me, because I'll listen back to the back catalog, and there's a couple of, well, all the records where at the time I'm like, oh, this is the best I can do. But what ends up happening is, in the long run, there's usually only like a song or two that makes any sense to me in the long run. And what I started to recognize this week is maybe the criteria for those songs that do stand the test of time are the ones that grow on their own accord, as opposed to forcing them. Now, I don't know if I would have been able to step away from the studio had I not been installing Atmos, but by doing that, it's everything just gets torn apart, and it's a lot of learning, and I can't be in there. I can't write. And so I guess, unless I'm forced to not write, it seems like that pattern would have kept going. So just kind of standing back from it, I realize, I guess, how much of my stress over the past couple of months has been me thinking, what is it? What is the nature of this record? Why is it not here? It's like it's such an important thing. It feels like such an important thing, with the orchestra and it's kind of like your life's work and all this sorts of thing. And I think the amount of importance I was putting on it was adding so much pressure to it being something that's where the blandness came. It's like I was afraid to let it rip. I'm afraid to really dig into the guts of what it actually is, because I was so busy trying to tell it what I think it should be. And I guess that just doesn't work. The good news, though, is that there is a couple of things that start rolling around, and to not even yet want to get in there, I think is proving to be really healthy. So I would suggest that if you're in a similar scenario, if you're trying to, if you're chasing that dragon of the inspiration, of those moments of creative, euphoria that come from, in my experience at least, identifying what the next thing is in a real broad stroke sense, and being able to just freely paint and go for it. If you're chasing that, which I am, maybe stopping for a while is a good thing. Two thoughts. First off, Atmos. Okay. So I finally got it set up, and I did it properly. And I got all the time alignment and the EQ curves and the phase, and set it all up so that when you're panning, it sounds like there's no discrete speakers. It's like one just orb of sound. And I think for those of you who have not listened to things in Atmos, I think you can on Apple Music, and I found out you can on Spotify as well. You just need to change some settings. But I've been listening to it on Apple Music, so I can also check out Apple TV and see how movies have utilized Atmos, right? The Dad Mum, I think, is it Dad Man, the third party, I don't even know what to call it, but it's another program that runs in tandem with the renderer and Pro Tools, and on that you can see the meters of left, center, right. I'm doing 914, so it's 9 speakers around me, 4 on the ceiling, and then a sub. And it's interesting because there's very little music that has been done in Atmos. Like when I'm looking through Apple Music and I'm looking for things to reference, it either falls into one of 3 categories. The first category is beautiful but strangely underwhelming. But that's a good thing, in that it doesn't seem like a gimmick. It just seems like, oh, this is what it should sound like. To the extent that we're able to reference music in 2023, this is what it should sound like. All right, let's do this. Like, forever. And there's a few artists that I think have been doing that well, actually. I thought Skrillex did it really well, and the John Hopkins psychedelic healing album, I forget what it was called, but that was really cool. And Jean-Michel Jarre, his recent record, it's a little more like things spinning around everywhere, but it was cool. It's like musical in a sense. The other category it falls in is just choose my words carefully so I don't seem condescending, but it seems like maybe not the old guard, but like there's a school of thought where they're like, well, let's redo Footloose and Beat It and Bohemian Rhapsody and all these things. We'll do it in Atmos, and we'll take things that we're also used to hearing in stereo, and then we'll spread it all out. And sometimes it works, but a lot of other times it just sounds really weird. It's like what made those songs so impactful at the time is the fact that they were limited to certain aspects of the recording process that you have to work around, and then the happy accidents result in a vibe. And then when you explode those songs and you have Rage Against the Machine or something that's like, guitars over here and bass there and a kick drum down there and a hi-hat over there, it just doesn't sound the same to me. It doesn't sound as powerful, I guess. So that's the other one, and there's a lot of that when they're saying, well, listen to spatial audio. There's all these songs that have been redone that I mean, it's negligible and sometimes not as cool, definitely, as the stereo. And then the third one is, it's like gimmicky. It's like you get just things going crazy and whizzing around and voices over here, voices over there, and I don't know if that's necessarily going to age well, in my opinion. But then going into the films and watching what they've done on the meters and seeing how Atmos is working with film and how they use the LFE and all this, makes me think, well, okay, so if you can record in Atmos, and if you do it from the ground up so that an immersive environment is the intent from the very beginning, well, that's where I'm excited about it. And by no means am I trying to be critical of other people's work in this way. Some of it I like better than others, of course. But it's more just an observation on my own side of like, okay, well, how can I utilize this for my own work? And I came away from it, because we just got it set up yesterday or the day before. I came away from it thinking, this is a huge, not untapped, but there's a lot of potential there for a creative domain that you could an environment that you could create for the listener that is, I guess, as it says on the tin, truly immersive, right? So I'm excited about that. Okay, what's next here? Okay, I was thinking about perfectionism. I saw something that was interesting about it, and the quote was that shame is the root cause of perfectionism. So I had to think about that, because I've always been a perfectionist. I've always been an imperfect perfectionist. But maybe there's something to that. Maybe your self-esteem is connected to portraying yourself in a certain way, so that anything other than perfect will let people in on the fact that maybe you're a charlatan or whatever it is, right? And I also heard that it was, and another thing I thought was very helpful is, the distance between good and perfect is infinite. So the old quote of the perfect is the enemy of the good helps as well. I think there was a guy, I remember when I was living in LA years ago, and I was staying with a group of people, and he had been working on a song I was there for a year, and he worked on that one song every day for a year. Every day. I heard it was burned into my head, just every day, and he kept it would go through these stages where I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then he'd keep going, and then it would get worse, and then he'd change it, and then he'd modify it, and then he'd move it ahead, and then he'd double the chorus, and then he'd make a new intro. And it was almost like, because he was a perfectionist, like me, it was like a convenient way to never have to finish it. You know, to claim that it was never done and it's not perfect means that you never have to suffer the scrutiny of people saying, oh, I don't like it, or, you know, kick drum doesn't sound good, or you know, see, I told you that you couldn't EQ a snare, or whatever. Like all these things that are going to be hoisted upon anybody who's brave enough to put their work out in the world. If I claim perfectionism, in a way, it's like a convenient way to never have to go through that, because it's never done, it's never perfect. But I love that idea that the difference between good and perfect is there's infinite space between good and perfect, so you're never going to get there. So deadlines are a good way to impose some degree of finality to a work or a song. But also, the other thing I wrote down that sort of plays into this is, I think the nature of art, in some sense, is self-discovery. And the process of uncovering is, you know, uncovering yourself is essential to the art. And I guess in the best case scenario, you can hope that it acts as a pathway. But I think about artificial intelligence, and I saw a thing the other day where Stephen Fry was reading a letter from, I think it was Nick Cave, when they sent it to the Chat GPT folks. You should look it up, it's on YouTube. It was interesting. But what he had said, which I started thinking about as well, and I wonder what your opinion is on it, below, is that maybe the immediacy and the brilliant textural composition that comes with artificial intelligence art or music or writing or anything like this, maybe the reason why it doesn't appeal to me as much as seeing somebody who has done something is that the foundation of art is not in the suffering, because that sounds like sort of a martyr trip, but more, as they had said in that speech that Stephen Fry did. Yeah, I urge you to check it out. It was interesting. That maybe it's the self, a little bit of the person, and the effort that, I guess by proxy, can be viewed as suffering, that went into the execution of the work, is what we're looking for in terms of how we resonate with other people's work. Because otherwise, it's hard to compete with something that's objectively perfect. But maybe the things that we like about it are different than the things that we thought about it. And that helps with my sense of perfectionism as well. Maybe I don't want perfect. Maybe the whole perfect idea, again, was just a convenient way to to never have to suffer scrutiny. And actually what I'm looking for is just ways towards your own self-discovery. And the art or the music or the literature or whatever you do acts as a conduit for that discovery. All right, what do we got next? A couple things. Wondering about this, see what you think of this. The amount of times people say to me, "You look tired. You should rest." I was wondering why that was always bugging me. First off, because I look tired because I'm fucking tired. I've been tired for years. Aren't you? Isn't everybody? Like, I think maybe there's a sense for people who are, even in the small degree that I am, like public in some way, that that you're immune to that. But no, man, of course I'm fucking tired. Of course I'm tired. And it's like, but that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't count for anything. And I think the same thing. It's like, well, when people say you should take a break, I think, who's able to do that? Like I've got so much that I'm responsible for. I've got so many things that I have to take care of, as I'm sure you do. You know, it's like the amount of things I have to do in a week. I think, man, if I stop doing that, all that stuff's just gonna, like, yeah, maybe that's on me. Which, you know, my point for bringing that up, other than, yeah, I look tired because I'm tired, is it's really hard when you have histories with people to accept good advice. You know, I did the interview with Steve Vai the other week, which maybe you saw. And Steve was saying in it that, you know, stress is optional. And at the time, I think just because, 30 years and our relationship has gone through a lot of ups and downs, I'm still a petulant kid in a lot of ways, and my reaction to being told anything is still, no, you're wrong. I'm right. But the more I thought about that statement of his, the more I started thinking, I wonder how much of that is worth investigating on my own side. And so I've been thinking about it a lot, and it makes me realize one thing that is embarrassing, I guess, is I think I'm addicted and have been addicted to stress and to the adrenaline that comes from it. I like to think that, that's not the case. I like to think that, you wouldn't suffer by your own hand willingly. Like, that's insane. But at the same time, I think, well, maybe it's just you get so used to that level of adrenaline. You get so used to the fact that when someone says, hey, take a break. And I'm like, I can't. I got so much to do. Everything would fall apart if I stopped. But I think the Moth as a project has to do with learning and the transformation that comes from learning. And I'm very fortunate to have a lot of really good teachers around me. Even people that you think you're teaching them, or even little kids or what have you. You tend to find lessons wherever you're looking, I guess. Or they keep banging you over the head till you get it. So that was something I was thinking about. One thing about Japan that I found very interesting for this next phase is the idea that they use shadows in equal proportion to the lighting to create an atmosphere. I used to think it was all about lighting things properly. You can use that analogy for music or whatever, but just in the physical sense, we're talking about lighting a room. I used to think, well, in order to get really moody lighting, it's all about the lights. But the thing I realized when I was there is it's like, that's the interplay. It's where the lights are and how that informs a shadow. So in a sense, you're using light to paint with shadow. And when I think about music, whether or not that's negative space or I don't know how that's going to play out yet, but I found that really interesting. I got so many things this week, but I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for next week, I think. What are some of the things here? Skepticism of anyone who claims answers. Fame is addictive because it makes you feel like you're somebody, that you know things, you get attached to that experience. It's the experience of separateness reinforced, and you suffer because of your identification. I'm not just somebody, but I'm somebody special. Caught in a drama based on a model of who we think we are. Loss of control, loss of power, and the group psychosis that we've all conspired to see as real. I forget where I read that. The illusion of separation. It's also so easy to quote all this crap, Okay, so I'm not writing, but I'm fermenting. I got about another week until the spaceship's done, and then another couple of weeks to get it all off the ground. But I hope you're doing well, and I hope your project's going well. Oh, and I was going to mention, last thing, might be interesting if any of you are writing, if you're writers, and you've got writer's block, why don't in the comments you write a 1 or 2 paragraph story? What would be the topic? A chipmunk named Nutty and his special power. But only 2 paragraphs. Let's see what happens. No chat GPT. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week. Yeah, man. See ya. Oh, my foot's asleep.